Money is a way of measuring your wealth, but is not the wealth itself. And so if you define yourself by your money, you are confusing yourself with the bookkeeping. Bookkeeping. What a marvelous word for it. Here we all are, frantic little bookkeepers, scribbling away in our ledgers, adding up columns of profit and loss with the intensity of medieval monks copying scripture. And what have we forgotten? We've forgotten what actual wealth feels like. It's rather like, imagine if you will, a master chef who becomes so utterly enchanted with his cookbook that he never actually cooks. He spends his days caressing the pages, memorizing every recipe, discussing the theoretical perfect balance of flavors with other cookbook enthusiasts. Meanwhile, his kitchen grows cold, his ingredients spoil, and his guests go hungry. But oh, what a beautiful cookbook he has. What precise measurements. What elegant descriptions. This is what we've done with money, you see. We've fallen in love with the recipe and forgotten about the feast. Think about it. What is real wealth? Close your eyes for a moment. No, really, try it. And feel the weight of your body in that chair. Notice the air moving in and out of your lungs. That's wealth. The fact that you're breathing without effort, without payment, without negotiation with the atmosphere. The real wealth is the morning coffee that actually warms your belly, not the dollar bills you exchanged for it. It's the roof that keeps the rain off your head, not the mortgage payments. It's the embrace of someone who truly sees you, not the anniversary gift you bought to express what you couldn't say. Money is simply the language we use to trade these real things. It's a brilliant invention, actually. This symbolic system that lets the baker trade bread for the cobbler's shoes without having to carry loaves around in his pockets. But somewhere along the way, we started collecting the words instead of enjoying the conversation. You know what I find absolutely enchanting? A child with a cardboard box. Give a child the most expensive toy in the world, and they'll play with it for 10 minutes. Give them a cardboard box, and they've got a spaceship, a house, a robot suit, a secret cave. The child knows something we've forgotten. The joy is not in the thing, but in the play. We adults, we've become terribly sophisticated. We've learned to measure everything. We know the square footage of our homes, the horsepower of our cars, the thread count of our sheets. But when did you last measure the quality of your sleep? When did you last count the number of genuine laughs you had in a day? Here's what's fascinating. We live in a culture that has created more wealth, real, actual, physical wealth, than any civilization in history. We have machines that wash our clothes, devices that let us speak to people on the other side of the planet, transportation that would seem like magic to our great-grandparents. And yet we feel poor. We feel anxious. We feel like we're running out of something. What are we running out of? Time? Money? Security? Or have we simply forgotten how to recognize abundance when it's staring us right in the face? The map is not the territory, as they say. But we've become a civilization of people who spend so much time studying maps that we've forgotten to take walks. We know the exact distance to the nearest coffee shop, but we've forgotten what it feels like to wander without a destination. So here's the delicious irony. The more we try to capture life in our accounts and measurements and 5-year plans, the more life slips through our fingers like water. Life is not a problem to be solved, my friend. It's a reality to be experienced. And yet, and this is where it gets really interesting, I'm not suggesting we throw away our wallets and live in caves. That would just be another form of the same confusion, wouldn't it? Another way of making money more important than it needs to be. No, the invitation is much more subtle than that. The invitation is to see money for what it actually is, a tool. A very useful tool, but a tool nonetheless. When you pick up a hammer, you don't confuse yourself with the hammer. When you use a telephone, you don't think you are the telephone. But somehow with money, we've made this category error. We think our bank balance is our identity. What if we could relate to money the way a musician relates to an instrument? The piano is not the music. The piano is what makes the music possible. The musician doesn't worship the piano or identify with the piano. The musician plays it. So the question becomes, what music are you trying to make with your life? And is your relationship with money helping you play that music? Or is it drowning out the melody? Because you see, my friend, this confusion we have about money is just one symptom of a much larger enchantment. We live in a culture that has taught us to mistake the symbol for the reality in almost everything we do. And once you begin to see this pattern, well, that's when things get really interesting. We are living in a culture entirely hypnotized by the illusion of time, in which we believe that the meaning and fulfillment of our life is in the future. Hypnotized. What a perfect word. Because that's exactly what's happened, isn't it? We've been put under a spell so gradually, so completely, that we don't even realize we're walking around in a trance. How did this happen? Well, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, and I do mean once upon a time, because this really did happen, humans discovered something remarkable. They discovered that instead of having to trade 6 chickens for a goat, and then trade the goat for grain, and then trade the grain for pottery, they could use little tokens to represent value. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. These little metal discs, these pieces of paper with pictures on them, they became a kind of universal solvent for human exchange. Suddenly the farmer could trade with the blacksmith, who could trade with the weaver, who could trade with the baker, and nobody had to carry livestock around in their pockets. But here's where the story gets interesting. Humans being humans, they started to get fascinated by the tokens themselves. The game of accumulating these symbols became addictive, and why shouldn't it? It's quite a thrilling game, actually. There are rules, there are strategies, there are ways to win and ways to lose. You can keep score very precisely. And unlike most games, this one never ends. You can always accumulate more. More, more, more. What a seductive word. More money, more security, more status, more power, more options, more freedom. The word itself has a kind of magnetic pull, doesn't it? But here's the trick, and it is a trick, though nobody planned it this way. The game has rules that ensure you can never actually win. The goalpost is always moving. Picture this. A man wakes up in the morning and thinks, I'll be happy when I get that promotion. Fair enough. He works hard, he gets the promotion. Does he wake up the next morning happy and satisfied? Oh, no. Now he wakes up thinking, well, that was nice, but I'll really be secure when I make 6 figures. He makes 6 figures. Now it's, I'll really be set when I have $1 million in the bank. He's like a man chasing his own shadow. The faster he runs toward it, the faster it moves away from him. And the shadow is always exactly the same distance away, just out of reach. The Zen masters have a wonderful term for this. They call it the hungry ghost, a creature with an enormous appetite and a mouth too small to feed itself. Always hungry, never satisfied. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not criticizing this man, or you, or myself, for getting caught up in this game. It's perfectly natural. We're social creatures, and we've created a social system based on symbolic exchange. The problem isn't the system itself. The problem is that we've forgotten it's a system. It's like watching a movie and getting so absorbed in the story that you forget you're sitting in a theater looking at light projected on a screen. The movie can be wonderful, thrilling, moving, but if you forget it's a movie, you're in trouble. We've forgotten that money is a movie. We're sitting in the theater of economic life, watching the drama unfold on the screen. The numbers going up, the numbers going down, the characters winning and losing, and we think it's reality. But what happens when the movie ends? What happens when you walk outside into the actual sunlight, breathe the actual air, feel the actual ground under your feet? The spell begins to break. Here's what's really fascinating about this hypnosis. It depends entirely on our agreement to remain asleep. Money only works because we all believe in it. If tomorrow morning everyone woke up and said, you know what, these pieces of paper aren't actually valuable, the entire system would vanish like smoke. It's the ultimate shared dream. We're all walking around pointing at these symbols and saying, yes, that's worth something, that's important, that matters. And because we all agree, it works. But the moment you see it as agreement, as collective dreaming, something shifts. You realize you have a choice about how deeply you want to participate in the dream. This is what I find absolutely delicious about our situation. We worry about artificial intelligence becoming too powerful, but we've already created an artificial intelligence. It's called the economic system. And we've programmed it with one simple instruction: grow, accumulate, expand more. And like a computer program, it doesn't question the instruction. It just follows it endlessly, regardless of consequences. More plastic in the ocean? The program doesn't care. It's following instructions. More stress, more anxiety, more people working jobs they hate to buy things they don't need. The program doesn't care. It's optimizing for growth. But here's the beautiful thing. We're not computers. We can wake up. We can question the programming. We can choose to play the game without being played by it. Because you see, the future we're all chasing, that magical moment when we'll have enough, that future never comes. It can't come. It's not designed to come. The system depends on us always wanting more, always feeling like we're not quite there yet. We sell our present, the only time we actually have, for a promised future that will never arrive. We trade our actual life for symbols of life. We give away the gold to chase fool's gold. But what if I told you that you're already wealthy beyond measure? What if I told you that right now, in this moment, you have access to something more valuable than all the money in all the banks in all the world? What if I told you that the secret to breaking the spell is not to fight it, but to play with it, to dance with it, to treat it like the elaborate game it actually is? But that would be telling, wouldn't it? And we're not quite ready for that yet. First, let's look at what it means to play the game with what I call a free hand. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play. Play. What a revolutionary word in our earnest, goal-oriented culture. We've been taught to be so serious about money, so grim about our financial future, so anxious about our economic security. But what if that's precisely the wrong approach? You see, there are two kinds of people who handle money: the tight-fisted and the free-handed. The tight-fisted person clutches every dollar, hoards every penny, approaches every financial decision with fear and scarcity. The free-handed person, well, they understand something. The tight-fisted person has forgotten. Money is like water. Try to grasp water in your fist, and what happens? It squeezes out between your fingers. Cup your hands gently, and it stays. Let it flow through your fingers, and there's always more. I once knew a man, let's call him Henry, who spent his entire life afraid of spending money. He had a modest job, lived in a tiny apartment, wore the same clothes until they fell apart. Not because he was poor, mind you, but because he was terrified of not having enough. Henry had a savings account that grew larger every year. He would check it constantly, calculating and recalculating how long it would last if he lost his job. He had spreadsheets, budgets, 5-year plans. He knew exactly how much he spent on groceries, on utilities, on everything. And you know what Henry had forgotten? He had forgotten how to live. His money was like blood that had stopped circulating. It was safe in the bank, yes, but it wasn't nourishing anything. It wasn't creating joy or beauty or connection or experience. It was just sitting there, growing, stagnating. Now, I'm not suggesting we all become spendthrifts. That's just the opposite side of the same fearful coin. The spendthrift is as obsessed with money as the miser. They just express their obsession differently. The free-handed player understands that money is meant to circulate. It's meant to flow. It's a river, not a lake. And rivers that stop flowing become swamps. Here's what I find fascinating. The people I've known who have the healthiest relationship with money are not necessarily the ones who have the most of it. They're the ones who understand what it's actually for. Money is for life. It's for experience. It's for facilitating the dance of giving and receiving that makes human civilization possible. It's a tool for creating beauty, for solving problems, for expressing care, for enabling adventure. Think about it. When you buy food, you're not really buying food. You're buying the energy that will fuel your next conversation, your next creative project, your next moment of laughter. When you pay rent, you're not really paying rent. You're buying the space where your life unfolds, where you sleep and dream and love and think. When you see it this way, spending money becomes an act of participation rather than loss. You're not losing money when you buy something meaningful. You're transforming it from symbol back into reality. But here's the key, and this is where it gets really interesting. The free-handed player doesn't spend carelessly or compulsively. They spend consciously. They ask, will this purchase enhance life or diminish it? Will this exchange of energy create beauty or create clutter? Will this transaction nourish what matters or feed what doesn't? There's an old saying, money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. The tight-fisted person is enslaved by money. They're so afraid of losing it that it controls their every decision. The free-handed person employs money. They use it as a tool to create the life they actually want to live. Now, here's something that might surprise you. The free-handed approach often leads to more financial abundance, not less. Why? Because when you're not paralyzed by fear about money, you can see opportunities more clearly. When you're not hoarding your resources, you can invest them in relationships and experiences and skills that create value. It's like the difference between a garden and a vault. The vault keeps everything safe, but nothing grows. The garden requires you to plant seeds to risk them to the soil and the weather. But that's the only way you get a harvest. The free-handed player also understands something crucial about earning money. They're not just selling time for dollars. They're not just trading hours of life for pieces of paper. They're engaging in the great dance of human exchange, giving their unique gifts to the world and receiving the world's gifts in return. When you approach work this way, everything changes. Instead of asking, how can I make more money? You ask, how can I give more value? How can I serve more beautifully? How can I express my talents in ways that genuinely help others? And here's the paradox. The more you focus on giving value rather than getting money, the more money tends to flow your way. It's not a technique or a strategy, it's a natural consequence of aligning yourself with the flow of life rather than against it. I remember talking to a friend who was miserable at his job, high-paying job, good benefits, all the external markers of success. But he would complain constantly about his boss, his co-workers, his responsibilities. I'm only doing this for the money, he would say. Only for the money. What a tragic phrase. He was selling 8 or 10 hours of his daily life, the most precious thing he possessed, for something he didn't even enjoy having. He was trading his life energy for symbols, and then wondering why he felt drained and resentful. The free-handed player asks a different question. How can I earn money in a way that energizes me rather than depletes me? How can I make my work itself a form of play, a form of creative expression? This doesn't mean everyone needs to quit their job and become an artist. It means bringing an artist's consciousness to whatever you do. It means approaching your work with curiosity, with playfulness, with a spirit of experimentation and growth. And sometimes, often, actually, this leads to changing what you do for work. But the change comes from expansion, not contraction. From possibility, not desperation. From a desire to give more of yourself, not to protect what little you have. The free-handed player also understands timing. They know when to hold and when to fold, when to save and when to spend, when to be conservative and when to take risks. They develop what you might call financial intuition, the ability to feel their way through money decisions, rather than just analyzing them to death. This intuition develops when you stop being afraid of money and start being curious about it. When you stop treating it as a matter of life and death and start treating it as a creative medium, because that's what it is, you know? Money is a creative medium. It's how we shape the material world through our choices and values and priorities. The question is, what are you creating with your money? What kind of world are you funding with your financial choices? The free-handed player knows that every dollar spent is a vote for the kind of world they want to live in. Every purchase is a statement of values. Every financial decision is an act of creation. And with that understanding comes tremendous freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want. That's just another form of slavery. To impulse. But the freedom to choose consciously, to act with intention, to play the money game as a conscious participant rather than an unconscious victim. So the question becomes, are you ready to play with a free hand? Are you ready to stop being afraid of money and start dancing with it? Are you ready to use this tool without being used by it? Because once you master this dance, once you learn to play the money game with genuine freedom, well, that's when you discover something absolutely extraordinary. You discover what wealth really means. You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. What an extraordinary sentence. Read it again slowly. You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. Do you realize what this means? It means that every experience you have, every sunset you witness, every conversation you enjoy, every moment of beauty or sadness or confusion is the universe experiencing itself through your consciousness. And if that's true, if you are literally a unique expression of the cosmos itself, then what does it mean to say you don't have enough? What does it mean to say you're poor? It's rather like a wave in the ocean worrying that it doesn't have enough water. Let me tell you about 2 men I once observed. Both were looking at the same sunset from the same park bench. The first man, beautifully dressed, expensive watch, clearly what we would call successful, was frantically checking his phone, reviewing stock prices, responding to emails. He glanced at the sunset once, briefly, then returned to his screen. The second man, wearing worn clothes, carrying all his possessions in a backpack, clearly what we would call homeless, was sitting perfectly still, completely absorbed in watching the colors change across the sky. His face was lit with wonder, with gratitude, with something approaching reverence. Now, tell me, which man was wealthy in that moment? The man with money was poor. He was missing the incredible gift that was being offered to him freely. The man without money was rich beyond measure. He was fully present to the beauty of existence itself. This is what we've forgotten, you see. We've forgotten that the most valuable things in life cannot be bought or sold. They can only be received. And they're being offered to us constantly, moment by moment, breath by breath. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, free. The taste of cool water when you're thirsty, essentially free. The sound of rain on the roof, the sight of stars in a clear night sky, the feeling of your lungs filling with air, all free, all priceless, all available right now. We live in the midst of abundance so vast, so fundamental, so extraordinary, that if we could truly see it, we would be overwhelmed with gratitude. But we've trained ourselves to look past all of this freely given wealth, to focus on the tiny fraction of life that must be purchased. Now, let's trace the journey we've taken together. We began by seeing how we confuse the measure with the treasure, how we mistake the menu for the meal. We saw how this confusion has hypnotized us into chasing a future that never arrives. We explored what it means to play the money game with a free hand, to use the tool without being used by it, and now we arrive at the heart of the matter, the discovery that you are already wealthy beyond imagination, not because of what you have, but because of what you are. You see, there are really only two kinds of wealth. There's symbolic wealth, money, possessions, status, credentials, and there's actual wealth. Actual wealth is consciousness itself, the ability to experience anything at all. Think about it. You could have all the money in the world, but if you were unconscious, in a coma, let's say, what good would it do you? The money would be meaningless, because there would be no one home to enjoy it. But consciousness, awareness, the simple fact that you exist, that you can think and feel and perceive, that's the ultimate treasure. That's the real currency of the universe. And here's the most wonderful part. This wealth cannot be stolen from you. It cannot fluctuate with the market. It cannot be taxed or regulated or diminished by economic recession. It's yours by birthright, yours by the simple fact of being alive. When you truly understand this, not just intellectually, but in your bones, in your blood, in your direct experience, your entire relationship with money changes. You stop being desperate for it because you're no longer dependent on it for your sense of worth or security or joy. Money becomes what it was always meant to be, a useful tool for navigating the material world. Nothing more, nothing less. You can appreciate it when you have it, use it wisely when you need it, and not be devastated when you don't have as much as you'd like. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to money. Far from it. When you stop being afraid of not having enough, you often discover you're capable of earning and managing money much more effectively. Fear makes us stupid, you see. Fear makes us grasp and hoard and make poor decisions. But when you know, really know, that your fundamental wealth cannot be threatened, you're free to be creative, generous, playful with money. You're free to take appropriate risks, to invest in meaningful projects, to give freely when giving is called for. You become like a master chef who's no longer worried about having enough ingredients. The anxiety is gone, so creativity can flow. The chef can focus on making something beautiful rather than obsessing over the inventory. Now, I want to address something directly. You might be thinking, this is all very poetic, Allan, but I have real bills to pay, real responsibilities, real financial pressures. How does all this philosophy help me with my actual situation? Fair question. And here's my answer. This understanding doesn't eliminate the practical aspects of dealing with money, but it transforms how you approach them. Instead of approaching financial challenges from a place of fear and scarcity, you approach them from a place of creativity and abundance. When you're not paralyzed by anxiety about money, you can think more clearly about money. When you're not desperate, you don't make desperate choices. When you remember that your fundamental worth is not determined by your net worth, you can negotiate, plan, and strategize from a position of inner strength. Let me be very concrete about this. If you're struggling with debt, for example, approaching it from this perspective means you stop defining yourself as someone who is in debt. You are a conscious being who happens to have some financial obligations to resolve. It's a practical problem, not an identity crisis. If you're worried about retirement, approaching it from this perspective means you plan wisely for your future needs while not sacrificing your present life to those plans. You prepare without becoming consumed by preparation. If you're trying to build wealth, approaching it from this perspective means you focus on creating genuine value in the world rather than just accumulating symbols. You ask, how can I use my unique gifts to serve life in a way that also supports my material needs? The practical and the philosophical are not separate, you see. They inform each other. Right understanding leads to right action. Clear seeing leads to skillful doing. And here's perhaps the most important point. When you wake up from the money dream, you don't lose the ability to play the money game. You gain the ability to play it joyfully, creatively, effectively. You're no longer playing to avoid losing. You're playing to create and explore and contribute. You're no longer driven by fear of not having enough. You're inspired by the possibility of using this tool, money, to participate more fully in the great dance of life. So here's my invitation to you. And it is an invitation, not a command or a prescription. The next time you handle money, whether it's a coin, a bill, a credit card, or just numbers on a screen, pause for a moment. See it for what it is, a symbol, an agreement, a shared dream that we've all chosen to participate in. Appreciate the ingenuity of it, the way it allows complex human cooperation and exchange. But don't confuse it with reality itself. Then, look up, look around. Notice what money is supposed to represent. The real wealth that surrounds you at every moment. The gift of consciousness. The miracle of being alive in a universe vast and mysterious beyond comprehension. Feel your heartbeat. Notice your breath. Look at the incredible complexity of your own hand. Realize that you are matter that has organized itself to become aware of itself. You are stardust that has learned to think and feel and wonder. That is your true capital. That is the real currency of the universe. And it has been deposited in your account, not by any bank, but by the cosmos itself. The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. And yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. The numbers on your bank statement are the dream, my friend. This moment, this breath, this awareness, this inexplicable fact that you exist at all, this is reality. Wake up. The wealth you've been seeking has been here all along. You are it.